A funeral is our way to say goodbye to a loved one. Over the years, I saw many JW funerals. When a funeral is done with respect, we say, "What a nice service." But my mom and aunt's funerals made me very mad. JW funerals are unique. You might be shocked to learn what JW funerals are really about. When a person dies, there is usually a service of some sort where a eulogy is given. One website describes a eulogy this way. A eulogy is a speech given at a funeral in commemoration of someone's life. It is a tribute to the person who died and can be delivered by family members or friends. For most of us, our parents are the biggest influence in our lives. Many of us, when we were children, might have had a person who was just as important. For me, it was my Aunt Jean. She passed away recently at the age of 86. My aunt was a faithful JW for over 60 years. It was her who brought my mom and I into the organization. As a matter of fact, when my mom passed in 1998, it was Aunt Jean's nephew who gave the memorial speech. I asked him why he only spoke about my mom for a few minutes. He spent over 20 minutes talking about the organization's teachings about death and, the resurrection. Then he dropped a bombshell on me. JW memorial services have an outline. I have the most recent outline approved by the Watchtower in 2020. When I read the outline, I was stunned, but I understood why my mom's memorial went as it did. In hindsight, my mom got as good a service as she could have gotten, thanks to Steve. Fast forward to last Saturday, I signed into the Zoom memorial for my aunt with my outline in hand. Here is the opening paragraph of the outline. Opening with prayer is optional. Well, this is contrary to the vast majority of Christian funerals who start with a prayer. The purpose of the talk is to uphold Jehovah as a God of love and mercy, and at the same time bring comfort to the bereaved. The primary purpose of a funeral is to remember the life of the deceased. JWs have it backwards. Give a fine witness concerning the truth, but also make your talk warm and personal. Not all points and scriptures need to be used. Adapt the material to match the circumstances of the deceased and the needs of grieving ones. While not overpraising the deceased, you may use events from his life throughout the talk to show how those in attendance can benefit from his example. Do you notice how they use the possessive pronoun his? This is an example of the organizational misogyny prevalent in the JW organization. Use good balance in this regard. You may choose to arrange a well-rehearsed interview with a brother in good standing who knew the deceased well. A well-rehearsed interview? Oh, how loving. And a brother, not a sister? More misogyny. Any use of humor should be moderate. The dignity of the occasion should be preserved. The talk need not exceed 30 minutes. Do not invite the audience to make expressions about the deceased, as this could introduce inappropriate or unscriptural elements into the program. This last bit is about controlling the narrative. Cults want total control over everything, even though it's traditionally common to open the floor for expressions about the deceased. JWs can't risk any comments that don't agree with their cult doctrines. The service was scheduled to officially start at 3 p.m. At 2:55, a picture slideshow was shown, showing pictures of my aunt throughout her life. Now, I enjoyed this part, although I did mute the Kingdom song they had playing. At 3 p.m., one of my aunt's grandsons read her obituary from the newspaper. I thought this was odd because, according to the outline, this should have been done by the brother giving the talk, like it states here. Remarks regarding the deceased. Use any that apply and are appropriate. Give details regarding age, birth, when married, surviving family, and so forth. Share the dedication record of the deceased, including privileges of service. Highlight exemplary qualities displayed by the deceased. He started with, "We all probably smiled during that photo slideshow, and if we look at John chapter 11, what? He literally said one sentence about my aunt. One. And then he launched immediately into the JW propaganda portion of the outline. I was furious. My aunt devoted over 60 years of her life to the cult. She was responsible for bringing my mom and I and dozens of others into the cult. Sure, she was 86 and no longer as active as she used to be, but one sentence? In no way, shape, or form is that acceptable. Not only was it inappropriate, but it was absolutely disrespectful to this wonderful lady. She deserved better. So, if you will indulge me, I'd like to say a few words about my Aunt Jean. As I said, Aunt Jean was 86. Now, maybe your mom had that best friend that was so close that even though you weren't related, you called her aunt. Well, that was my Aunt Jean. It wasn't until my 30s when she became my real aunt when she married my real Uncle Tony. I knew my Aunt Jean my entire life. Countless childhood memories center around Aunt Jean. I learned to swim in her pool. I learned to drive a car at 10 years old on her farm. I watched the birth of a calf at her farm. And I discovered the joys of red meat at a cookout after a beef slaughter. Up until then, I only ate well-done hamburger. My Aunt Jean loved baking desserts. Even now, I can close my eyes and still taste those Hershey Kiss cookies she used to make. Even at my age, I can honestly say she was the sweetest woman I ever knew. So when I saw the disrespect shown to her at that memorial service, it angered me. The rest of the service was nothing but a recruitment ad for the JWs. It would have been quicker if they just said, "Jean was a happy JW. You should be one too." While the speaker only said one sentence about my aunt, he spoke volumes about the organization. His speech clearly showed that JWs are a deceitful, dangerous, and deadly cult. They dishonored her memory for the sake of spewing cult propaganda. That is simply indefensible. Sometimes people in the comments section ask me, "Oh, why can't you just leave JWs alone?" I'll tell you why. I do it because it is a cult that distorts Bible scriptures to protect pedophiles. And because its doctrines literally kill thousands of people. I make these videos to give you the facts I wish my Aunt Jean had so many decades ago. Then maybe she would have had a respectful eulogy instead of being used as a recruitment tool by an evil cult.